Welcome back, everyone. Today we will be reading chapters 7 through 9, so let's get into it. Chapter 7. Marvin stood at the end of the bridge corridor. He was not, in fact, a particularly small robot. His silver body gleamed in the dusty sunbeams and shook with the continual barrage which the building was still undergoing. He did, however, look pitifully small as the gigantic black tank rolled to a halt in front of him. The tank examined him with a probe. The probe withdrew. Marvin stood there. "Out of my way, little robot," growled the tank. "I'm afraid," said Marvin, "that I've been left here to stop you." The probe extended again for a quick recheck. It withdrew again. "You? Stop me?" roared the tank. "Go on." "No, I really have," said Marvin simply. "What are you armed with?" roared the tank in disbelief. "Guess," said Marvin. The tank's engines rumbled, its gears ground. Molecule-size electronic relays deep in its microbrain flipped backward and forward in consternation. "Guess," said the tank. Zaphod and the as-yet unnamed man lurched up one corridor, down a second, and along a third. The building continued to rock and shudder as this puzzled Zaphod. If they wanted to blow the building up, why was it taking so long? With difficulty, they reached one of a number of totally anonymous, unmarked doors and heaved at it. With a sudden jolt, it opened and they fell inside. All this way, thought Zaphod, all this trouble, all this not lying on the beach having a wonderful time, and for what? A single chair, a single desk, and a single dirty ashtray in an undecorated office. The desk, apart from a bit of dancing dust and a single revolutionary new form of paperclip, was empty. "Where," said Zaphod, "is Zarnawup?" feeling that his already tenuous grasp of the point of this whole exercise was beginning to slip. "He's on an intergalactic cruise," said the man. Zaphod tried to size the man up. Earnest type, he thought, not a barrel of laughs. He probably apportioned a fair whack of his time to running up and down heaving corridors, breaking down doors, and making cryptic remarks in empty offices. "Let me introduce myself," the man said. "My name is Roosta, and this is my towel." "Hello, Roosta," said Zaphod. "Hello, towel," he added as Roosta held out to him a rather nasty old flowery towel. Not knowing what to do with it, he shook it by the corner. Outside the window, one of the huge slug-like gunmetal green spaceships growled past. "Yes, go on," said Marvin to the huge battle machine. "You'll never guess." Said the machine, vibrating with unaccustomed thought. "Laser beams." Marvin shook his head solemnly. "No," muttered the machine in its deep guttural rumble. "Too obvious. Antimatter ray?" it hazarded. "Far too obvious," admonished Marvin. "Yes," grumbled the machine, somewhat abashed. How about an electric ram?" This was new to Marvin. "What's that?" he said. "One of these," said the machine with enthusiasm. From its turret emerged a sharp prong which spat a single lethal blaze of light. Behind Marvin, a wall roared and collapsed as a heap of dust. The dust billowed briefly, then settled. "No," said Marvin, "not one of those." "Good, though, isn't it?" "Very good," agreed Marvin. "I know," said the Frogstar battle machine after another moment's consideration. "You must have one of those new xanthic restruction destabilizing xenon emitters." Nice, aren't they? Said Marvin. That's what you've got? Said the machine in considerable awe. No, said Marvin. Oh, said the machine, disappointed. Then it must be... You're thinking along the wrong lines, said Marvin. You're failing to take into account something fairly basic in the relationship between men and robots. I know, said the battle machine. Is it... It trailed off into thought again. Just think, urged Marvin. They left me, an ordinary menial robot, to stop you, a gigantic heavy-duty battle machine, while they ran off to save themselves. What do you think they would leave me with? Oh, muttered the machine in alarm. Something pretty damn devastating, I should expect. Expect, said Marvin. Oh, yes, expect. I'll tell you what they gave me to protect myself with. Shall I? Yes, all right, said the battle machine, bracing itself. Nothing, said Marvin. There was a dangerous pause. Nothing, roared the battle machine. Nothing at all, intoned Marvin dismally. Not an electronic sausage. The machine heaved about with fury. Well, doesn't that just take the biscuit? It roared. Nothing, eh? Just don't think, do they? And me, said Marvin in a soft, low voice, with this terrible pain in all the diodes down my left side. Makes you spit, doesn't it? Yes, agreed Marvin with feeling. Hell, that makes me angry, bellowed the machine. Think I'll smash that wall down. The electron ram stabbed out another searing blaze of light and took out the wall next to the machine. How do you think I feel? Said Marvin bitterly. Just ran off and left you, did they? The machine thundered. Yes, said Marvin. I think I'll shoot down their bloody ceiling as well, raged the tank. It took out the ceiling of the bridge. That's very impressive, murmured Marvin. You ain't seen nothing yet, promised the machine. I can take out this floor, too. No trouble. It took out the floor, too. Hell's bells! The machine roared as it plummeted 15 stories and smashed itself to bits on the ground below. What a depressingly stupid machine, said Marvin, and trudged away. Chapter 8. So, do we just sit here or what? Said Zaphod angrily. What do these guys out here want? You, Beeblebrox, said Roosta. They're going to take you to the Frog Star, the most totally evil world in the galaxy. Oh, yeah? Said Zaphod. They'll have to come and get me first. They have come and got you, said Roosta. Look out the window. Zaphod looked and gaped. The ground's going away, he gasped. Where are they taking the ground? They're taking the building, said Roosta. We're airborne. Clouds streaked past the office window, one in the open air, again out in the open air. Again, Zaphod could see the ring of dark green Frog Star fighters around the uprooted tower of the building. A network of force beams radiated in front of them and held the tower in a firm grip. Zaphod shook his head in perplexity. What have I done to deserve this? He said. I walk into a building, they take it away. It's not what you've done they're worried about, said Roosta. It's what you're going to do. Well, don't I get a say in that? You did, years ago. You better hold on. We're in for a fast and bumpy journey. If I ever meet myself, said Zaphod, I'll hit myself so hard I won't know what's hit me. Marvin trudged in through the door, looked at Zaphod accusingly, slumped in a corner, and switched himself off. On the bridge of the Heart of Gold, all was silent. Arthur stared at the rack in front of him in thought. He caught Trillion's eyes as she looked at him inquiringly. He looked back at the rack. Finally, he saw it. He picked up 5 small plastic squares and laid them on the board that lay just in front of the rack. The 5 squares had on them the 5 letters E, X, Q, I, and U. He laid them next to the letters S-I-T-E. Exquisite, he said, on a triple word score. Scores rather a lot, I'm afraid. The ship bumped and scattered some of the letters for the nth time. Trillian sighed and started to sort them out again. Up and down the silent corridors echoed Ford Prefect's feet as he stalked the ship, thumping dead instruments. Why did the ship keep shaking, he thought. Why did it rock and sway? Why could he not find out where they were? Where, basically, were they? The left-hand tower of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy offices streaked through interstellar space at a speed never equaled either before or since by any other office block in the universe. In a room halfway up, Zaphod Beeblebrox strode angrily. Roosta sat on the edge of the desk, doing some routine towel maintenance. "Hey, where did you say this building was flying to?" demanded Zaphod. "The Frog Star," said Roosta. "The most totally evil place in the universe." "Do they have food there?" said Zaphod. "Food? You're going to the Frog Star and you're worried about whether they've got food? Without food, I may not make it to the Frog Star." Out of the window, they could see nothing but the flickering lights of the force beams and vague green streaks, which were presumably the distorted shapes of the Frog Star fighters. At this speed, space itself was invisible, and indeed unreal. "Here, suck this," said Roosta, offering Zaphod his towel. Zaphod stared at him as if he expected a cuckoo to leap out of his forehead on a small spring. "It's soaked in nutrients," explained Roosta. "What are you, a messy eater or something?" said Zaphod. "The yellow stripes are high in protein. The green ones have vitamin B and C complexes. The little pink flowers contain wheat germ extract." Zaphod took and looked at it in amazement. "What are the brown stains?" he asked. "Barbecue sauce," said Roosta, "for when I get sick of wheat germ." Zaphod sniffed it doubtfully. Even more doubtfully, he sucked a corner. He spat it out again. "Ugh," he stated. "Yes," said Roosta. "When I've had to suck that end, I usually need to suck the other end a bit, too." "Why?" asked Zaphod suspiciously. "What's in that?" "Antidepressants," said Roosta. "I've gone right off this towel, you know," said Zaphod, handing it back. Roosta took it back from him, swung himself off the desk, walked around it, sat in the chair, and put his feet up. "Beeblebrox," he said, sticking his hands behind his head, "have you any idea what's going to happen to you on the Frog Star?" "They're going to feed me?" hazarded Zaphod hopefully. "They're going to feed you," said Roosta, "into the total perspective vortex." Zaphod had never heard of this. He believed that he had heard of all the fun things in the galaxy, so he assumed that the total perspective vortex was not fun. He asked Roosta what it was. "Only," said Roosta, "the most savage psychic torture a sentient being can undergo." Zaphod nodded a resigned nod. "So," he said, "no food, huh?" "Listen," said Roosta urgently. "You can kill a man, destroy his body, break his spirit, but only the total perspective vortex can annihilate a man's soul. The treatment lasts seconds, but the effects last the entire rest of your life." "You ever had a pan-galactic gargle blaster?" asked Zaphod sharply. "This is worse," admitted Zaphod, much impressed. "Any idea why these guys might want to do this to me?" he added a moment later. "They believe it will be the best way of destroying you forever. They know what you're after. Could they drop me a note and let me know as well?" "You know," said Roosta. "You know, Beeblebrox. You want to meet the man who rules the universe. Can he cook? Said Zaphod on reflection. He added, I doubt if he can. If he could cook a good meal, he wouldn't worry about the rest of the universe. I want to meet a cook. Roosta sighed heavily. What are you doing here anyway? Demanded Zaphod. What's all this got to do with you? I'm just one of those who planned this thing, along with Zarnawoop, along with Uden Vranks, along with your great-grandfather, along with you, Beeblebrox. Me? Yes, you. I was told you had changed. I didn't realize how much. But I am here to do one job. I will do it before I leave you. What job, man? What are you talking about? I will do it before I leave you. Roosta lapsed into an impenetrable silence. Zaphod was terribly glad. Chapter 9. The air around the second planet of the Frog Star system was stale and unwholesome. The dank winds that swept continually over its surface swept over salt flats, dried up marshland, tangled and rotting vegetation, and the crumbling remains of ruined cities. No life moved across its surface. The ground, like that of many planets in this part of the galaxy, had long been deserted. The howl of the wind was desolate enough as it gusted through the old decaying houses of the cities. It was more desolate as it whipped about the bottoms of the tall black towers that swayed uneasily here and there about the surface of this world. At the top of these towers lived colonies of large, scraggy, evil-smelling birds, the sole survivors of the civilization that once lived here. The howl of the wind was at its most desolate, however, when it passed over a pimple of a place set in the middle of a wide gray plain on the outskirts of the largest of the abandoned cities. This pimple of a place was the thing that had earned this world the reputation of being the most totally evil place in the galaxy. From without it, it was simply a steel dome about 30 feet across. From within, it was something more monstrous than the mind can comprehend. About 100 yards or so away, and separated from it by a pockmarked and blasted stretch of the most barren and land imaginable, was what would probably have to be described as a landing pad of sorts. That is to say, that scattered over a languish area were the ungainly hulks of 2 or 3 dozen crash-landed buildings. Flitting over and around these buildings was a mind that was waiting for something. The mind directed its attention into the air, and before very long a distant speck appeared, surrounded by a ring of smaller specks. The larger speck was the left-hand tower of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy office building, descending through the stratosphere of Frog Star World B. As it descended, Roosta suddenly broke the long, uncomfortable silence that had grown up between the two men. He stood up and gathered his towel into a bag. He said, "Beeblebrox, I will now do the job I was sent here to do." Zaphod looked up at him from where he was sitting in a corner, sharing unspoken thoughts with Marvin. "Yeah?" he said. "The building will shortly be landing. When you leave the building, do not go out the door," said Roosta. "Go out the window." "Good luck," he added, and walked out of the door, disappearing from Zaphod's life as mysteriously as he had entered it. Zaphod leaped up and tried the door, but Roosta had already locked it. He shrugged and returned to the corner. 2 minutes later, the building crash-landed amongst the other wreckage. Its escort of Frog Star fighters deactivated their force beams and soared off into the air again, bound for Frog Star World A, an altogether more congenial spot. They never landed on Frog Star World B. No one did. No one ever walked on its surface other than the intended victims of the total perspective vortex. Zaphod was badly shaken by the crash. He lay for a while in the silent, dusty rubble, to which most of the room had been reduced. He felt that he was at the lowest ebb he had ever reached in his life. He felt bewildered. He felt lonely. He felt unloved. Eventually, he felt he ought to get whatever it was over with. He looked around the cracked and broken room. The wall had split around the doorframe, and the door hung open. The window, by some miracle, was closed and unbroken. For a while he hesitated. Then he thought that if his strange and recent companion had been through all that, he had been through just to tell him what he had told him. Then there must be a good reason for it. With Marvin's help, he got the window open. Outside it, the cloud of dust aroused by the crash, and the hulks of the other buildings with which this one was surrounded, effectively prevented Zaphod from seeing anything of the world outside. Not that this concerned him unduly. His main concern was what he saw when he looked down. Zarnawup's office was on the 15th floor. The building had landed at a tilt of about 45 degrees, but still the descent looked heart-stopping. Eventually, stung by the continuous series of contemptuous looks that Marvin appeared to be giving him, he took a deep breath and clambered out onto the steeply inclined side of the building. Marvin followed him, and together they began to crawl slowly and painfully down the 15 floors that separated them from the ground. As he crawled, the dank air and dust choked his lungs. His eyes smarted, and the terrific distance down made his head spin. The occasional remark from Marvin, of the order of, "This is the sort of thing you life forms enjoy, isn't it? I ask merely for information," did little to improve his state of mind. About halfway down the side of the shattered building, they stopped to rest. It seemed to Zaphod, as he lay there panting with fear and exhaustion, that Marvin seemed a mite more cheerful than usual. Eventually, he realized this wasn't so. The robot just seemed cheerful in comparison with his own mood. A large, scraggy black bird came flapping through the slowly setting clouds of dust and, stretching down its scrawny legs, landed on an inclined window ledge a couple of yards from Zaphod. It folded its ungainly wings and teetered awkwardly on its perch. Its wingspan must have been something like 6 feet, and its head and neck seemed curiously large for a bird. Its face was flat, the beak underdeveloped, and halfway along the underside of its wings, the vestiges of something hand-like could be clearly seen. In fact, it looked almost human. It turned its heavy eyes on Zaphod and clicked its beak in a desultory fashion. "Go away," said Zaphod. "Okay," muttered the bird morosely, and flapped off into the dust again. Zaphod watched its departure in bewilderment. "Did that bird just talk to me?" he asked Marvin nervously. He was quite prepared to believe the alternative explanation, that he was in fact hallucinating. "Yes," confirmed Marvin. "Poor souls," said a deep, ethereal voice in Zaphod's ear. Twisting around violently to find the source of the voice nearly caused Zaphod to fall off the building. He grabbed savagely at a protruding window fitting and cut his hand on it. He hung on, breathing heavily. The voice had no visible source whatsoever. There was no one there. Nevertheless, it spoke again. "A tragic history behind them, you know. A terrible blight." Zaphod looked wildly about. The voice was deep and quiet. In other circumstances, it would even be described as soothing. There is, however, nothing soothing about being addressed by a disembodied voice out of nowhere, particularly when you are, like Zaphod Beeblebrox, not at your best and hanging from a ledge 8 stories up a crashed building. "Hey, he stammered. "Shall I tell you their story?" inquired the voice quietly. "Hey, who are you?" panted Zaphod. Where are you? Later then, perhaps, muttered the voice. I am Gargavar. I am the custodian of the total perspective vortex. Why can't I see? You will find your progress down the building greatly facilitated, the voice lifted. If you move about 2 yards to your left, why don't you try it? Zaphod looked and saw a series of short horizontal grooves leading all the way down the side of the building. Gratefully, he shifted himself across to them. Why don't I see you again at the bottom? Why don't I see you again at the bottom? Said the voice in his ear, and as it spoke, it faded. Hey! Called out Zaphod. Where are you? It'll only take you a couple of minutes, said the voice very faintly. Marvin, said Zaphod earnestly to the robot squatting dejectedly next to him. Did a voice just... Yes, Marvin replied tersely. Zaphod nodded. He took out his peril-sensitive sunglasses again. They were completely black, and by now quite badly scratched by the unexpected metal object in his pocket. He put them on. He would find his way down the building more comfortably if he didn't actually have to look at what he was doing. Minutes later, he clambered over in the ripped and mangled foundations of the building, and once more, removing his sunglasses, he dropped to the ground. Marvin joined him a moment or so later and lay face down in the dust and rubble, from which position he seemed disinclined to move. Ah, there you are, said the voice suddenly in Zaphod's ear. Excuse me leaving you like that. It's just that I have a terrible head for heights. At least, it added wistfully, I did have a terrible head for heights. Zaphod looked around slowly and carefully, just to see if he had missed something which might be the source of the voice. All he saw, however, was the dust, the rubble, and the towering hulks of the encircling buildings. Hey, why can't I see you? He said. Why aren't you here? I am here, said the voice slowly. My body wanted to come, but it's a bit busy at the moment. Things to do, people to see. After what seemed like a sort of ethereal sigh, it added, You know how it is with bodies. Zaphod wasn't sure about this. I thought I did, he said. I only hope it's gone and in for a rest cure, continued the voice. The way it's been living recently, it must be on its last elbows. Elbows? Said Zaphod. Don't you mean last legs? The voice said nothing for a while. Zaphod looked around uneasily. He didn't know if it had gone or was still there or what it was doing. Then the voice spoke again. So, you are to be put into the vortex, yes? Oh, well, said Zaphod with a very poor attempt at nonchalance. This cat's in no hurry, you know? I can just slouch about and take in a look at the local scenery, you know? Have you seen the local scenery? Asked the voice of Gargavar. No. Zaphod clambered over the rubble and rounded the corner of one of the wrecked buildings that was obscuring his view. He looked out at the landscape of Frogstar World B. Ah, okay, he said. I'll just sort of slouch about then. No, said Gargavar. The vortex is ready for you now. You must come. Follow me. Yeah, said Zaphod. And how am I meant to do that? I'll hum for you, said Gargavar. Follow the humming. A soft, keening sound drifted through the air, a pale, sad sound that seemed to be without any kind of focus. It was only by listening very carefully that Zaphod was able to detect the direction from which it was coming. Slowly, dazedly, he stumbled off in its wake. What else was there to do? That's it for this week. We will see you guys next week with chapters 10 through 12. See you guys.